All right. Well, once again, welcome everyone for welcome to this conversation hosted by the AACRAO Black Caucus. My name is Dr. Gwendolyn Davis. I am the current chair of Black Caucus, but soon to roll off, and that seat will be filled by the more than capable and dynamic Portia Lamar. So, and I will give you a heads up if you haven't noticed. So the initial um announcement mentioned, excuse me, Rock Hall, but he was called away. His bread and butter said he needed to do some other things. And so he had to tend to work-related matters. But our very own Dr. Reginald Garcon has agreed to fill in that space and to guide and facilitate this conversation. For those of you who do not know Dr. Garcon, he is currently the associate vice president. Yes, of student records and the university registrar at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He is also past president of AACRAO, which is the Chesapeake and Potomac Association. And he comes not only with 25 years plus experience in higher education, but a wealth of knowledge across the board in many areas, including the arts. So we will have a wonderful conversation. Our theme, or the theme that was set for this year's Black History Month, is African Americans in labor. I'm just going to read a couple of the themes. So the themes are typically set by the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And what they say, and I'm going to be brief, what they say, the theme, African Americans in Labor, intends to encourage broad reflections on intersections between Black people's work and their workplaces in all their iterations and key moments, themes, and events in Black history and culture across time and space throughout the US, Africa, and the diaspora. 2025 also marks the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids by labor organizer and civil rights activist A. Philip Randolph, which was the first Black union to receive a charter in the American Federation of Labor. And so this conversation that we're going to have today is guided by the work that has been accomplished by African Americans and their labor, paid, unpaid, skilled, unskilled, across the board, and what that's done with the foundation of America, how that has stood up the foundation of this country, and the meaning of that, and how that applies to us and what we do, and in our workplaces, our workspaces, and I'll even say our interests. And so with that, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Garcon, and thank you once again for leading this conversation.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. Once again, I'm Dr. Reginald Garcon, and it is my privilege to share some insights with you this afternoon on behalf of my colleague, Rock Hall. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a brief PowerPoint of which I'm going to highlight some key pieces of information, some historical perspectives, as well as some guiding questions that will get us to where we need to go this afternoon. And then it's going to be an opportunity to hear from you based on those questions and the information that I've shared to get your insights. So just one second. All righty. So today, trends in Black college enrollment and employment, a historical and policy analysis ranging from 1965 to 2025. But before I even start, I hope you have a little sheet of paper next to you. I have 5 quick questions I need you to answer. So And these are yes and no questions, okay? So just feel free to find something a little, post it and just write yes or no. And then I'd like to hear from you afterwards. So I'm gonna go to the next slide and here are the questions. The very first question, have you ever been able to attend school without worrying about financial stress? So just write yes or no and for number one. For number two, have you ever been treated unfairly because of your race, gender, or background? Yes or no? Question number three, have you had access to healthcare without difficulty? Yes or no? Question number four, do
Sorry
you,
to interrupt. I don't think we're sharing the screen. We can see the PowerPoint, like the home page, but it's not showing the slideshow.
hmm, okay. Um,
I can see your mouse moving now. So, I mean, we're seeing the screen.
Yeah,
But just flash first.
just put it in the presentation mode. That go down to the bottom. There's before you get to your black menu bar down at the bottom.
okay.
It says comments. Then you have another icon. On that last icon before you get to your zoom in, click that. I can't see your.
Hold on. Let me try. So which screen are you seeing right now? Still the first screen?
We see the screen that shows it as in like you're editing it.
Gotcha. This. Is it still the same?
Yeah. Well, okay, but if
Are
you,
there,
for the sake
do
of
you have
time,
multiple monitors? Maybe it's
Yes,
sharing on a different
multiple
monitor.
monitors. That's it.
yeah, you have to pick the monitor you wanted to share it from.
Okay.
But while you're figuring it out, if you can just have it, oh, I was gonna say, if you could just show your second slide, that had the questions on it.
Correct. Hold on one second.
Technology, am I right?
Yes, technology. I'll read the fourth question. Do you feel safe in your neighborhood regardless of time of day? Yes or no? And then last, do you have family members or mentors who have successfully navigated higher education?
I was gonna say also, my computer decided to do a long 20-minute reboot and that messes everything up. So technology is as good as we can get it to be.
Okay, which screen do you see now?
We see your presentation screen, but I don't know if you all feel this way. I'll take this over the other one. It's a little bit bigger.
Agreed.
Cool.
Okay. I'll try one last time and then I'm going to move on because it's technology. Okay. Just bear with me. We want this one.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yay.
Okay. I just needed to press the right one. It's okay. No problem. So after answering those questions, yes or no, how did you feel about some of the responses that you wrote? I wanted to give you all just an opportunity if someone wants to just come off mute and just sort of share if there was any significance in any of the questions asked or the response that you ultimately wrote down. I would love to hear.
I will go first, I guess. And I don't, I haven't, no, there wasn't a no, you know what I mean? But with the last question, as slow as we may sometimes believe higher education is, it's still fast. And I feel like my parents went to school, but it was still a learning curve when I went to school. And I honestly believe it'll still be a learning curve when my daughter goes to school. So that's my thoughts on the last one. But the other ones, I understand my privilege in all of this or what I have been set up to do with the other ones.
Thank you, Portia. And I'm glad you mentioned that word privilege, because this is actually a privilege exercise. Anyone else would like to share in regards, one way or the other, in regards to uh, even whether or not by answering these questions, you may not have realized how you might have had privilege while others may not have?
So I have, these questions made me think, and all of my questions were answered yes. And like Portia, you know, I'm blessed, and I do recognize the privilege that I've had. However, question number 3, have I ever had access to healthcare without difficulty? So while I've never had access to healthcare without difficulty, when my son was born, he was born 12 weeks early. And when I was while and I'm a single parent. I raised him by myself. And I just could not believe when I was in the hospital, they assigned me a social worker. And I mean, and I had Blue Cross Blue Shield, like I was doing something. And I just couldn't understand. Like when the social worker walked in my hospital room and was asking me all these questions, I'm looking at her sideways because I was like, why? I have full coverage. Why is she asking me all these crazy questions? You know, and so that bullet number 3, you know, really made me think. It made me think, because here I was working every day, 40 hours a week, but because I was, you know, unmarried, pregnant with my son, and he was born prematurely, someone felt the need to assign me a social worker, and she literally did home visits with me and everything.
So see,
And
I feel like that's 2 and 3.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, yeah, it is, to be honest with you. But
And
yeah.
I thank you for sharing, because that brings back to, although I was mad at my mama for doing it, however, because one, she had made me mad because she didn't go get my Whopper like I wanted right after I had my child because I was hungry. But the second part was when they were going through all the questionnaires and asking all those questions, she made it so apparent to let them know that I had a degree. And I was like, why is she doing that? But I see why through your story, Rosalind.
Wow. Thank you both for sharing. Any other insights before we
Um,
continue?
I'd
Yes.
like to share one thing. It's the
Oh, please.
5th question for me. I believe it asked if you had a mentor or some type, or were there any mentors? And when I heard the question, I was like, no. But then I realized that that's what motivates me. I am that mentor. I've accepted that as I want to be that mentor for the next generation, for them to know how important their education is. It's something that no one can take from you. It's a lot of things that people can remove from you, but your education, what you know and who you are, that's something that can't be taken from you. So I realized in that moment that that is me. Although I didn't have it, I have become that because it would have been great to have that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful, and I'm sure later on that will probably come up in one of the ending question or discussion questions that I have in terms of possible things that can happen. Any other insights? I just have a few slides to share with some information. Just want to give anyone, they have a burning thing to share.
So Dr. Garcon, I have one last one.
Yes, please.
For bullet number 5. So when I worked at Cleveland State, I had a mentor, and she had a terminal degree, she had a PhD, and this was when I was not on the registrar side of the house, I was on the bursar side of the house. She was the vice president for student affairs, and she was a Black female. And my boss at the time was a white male. And so I had meetings with her because I was a chapter advisor to some of the student organizations. And so when I went in to tell my boss that I had a meeting with this person, he was like, oh, he said, you're about to meet with the bitch. And I was like, excuse me? And I said, what? Oh, he says, oh, you're about to meet with Dr. So-and-so. She makes you address her as Dr. So-and-so. Okay, she earned those letters. And because of that, she's got to be the B word for real. And to this day, that woman has mentored me. Anytime I need her, I can call on her. And we even went so far as to have a discussion one time. And she says, oh, she said, I know what they call me. She said, but that's not going to stop me. She said, that's not going to stop me from having them address me as they should. And I just could not believe, like he literally, and here he is, he was in a director level role. And he said that to me before I went to meet with her.
Wow. And thank you, all of you, for sharing that. And what it makes me think about um, mentorship, but differently. Right now, I am being mentored by a couple of people. But prior to that, I sort of served as that mentor for other colleagues. When things would come up, they would call and brainstorm. And I guess at that time, I didn't necessarily look at it as a mentor, but more of it's a colleague asking questions, or I'm getting ready to apply for something, or I need to run something. But I served as that person, and now um, as I'm getting mentored differently, yes, I do see the value of it. And when you have those opportunities to share with others, your colleagues, it does make a difference, especially when they're coming from different places, not always within your specific field, or, it plays a big difference. And this really will impact when we think about what's happening. Okay, let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to get this working. Okay, here we go. Good. I'm getting used to multiple screens and technology because this is a new one. Uh, Back in the 50s through the 70s, I'm just going to quickly highlight some of the next particular slides, but there was an impact because of segregation. And it ranged from employment, from having low-paying jobs and discriminatory hiring practices, education, housing, and economic mobility, when because of where you lived impacted what resources you might get or may not get, or things got redlined specifically so that you wouldn't necessarily get access to resources. Then there was economic growth as it pertains to segregation, how it hindered economic progress. And then ultimately, we had the civil rights movement, which was that opportunity to advocate for economic justice and fair wages. And we'll come back to this, but differently a little later, because it seems right now there's a different version of civil rights that's being infringed upon, and it's a matter of what are we going to do. But we'll go to that in a little bit. So we got a sense of what was happening from the economic perspective, but on the Black college enrollment trends, what was happening was that back in 1965, only 4% of Black Americans had access to college. And then about a decade later, you had about 1 million students. And then you fast forward to about 2022, when there's about 36% of college enrollment of Black students from the ages of 18 to 24. Now in 2025, there's been a slight decline in enrollment, but for various reasons. But it still shows that there's still the interest and the need and the want for college education. Now, there's been a lot of policies that's impacted college enrollment for the positive. When you think of financial aid, increasing access to help boost enrollment. When you think of different admissions policies, how things have changed over time so that there are now test optional policies, so that just because you didn't quite have that GPA or make that SAT, ACT, GRE scores, there are different options for consideration for acceptance into a university, a college or university. Same thing with the application processes. They're not as cumbersome as they've been in the past. And what that has done, it helps reduce some of the barriers that have existed, especially for low-income students. And then last, support services. There's different wraparound services at different colleges and universities specifically geared to help student success, be engaged, increase retention, and ultimately the graduation rates. So let's look at Black employment from the 1920s to the 2020s. In short, in the 1990s, Black employment was about double, unemployment was about double that of white Americans. Then in the 2000s, we sort of had the Great Recession that impacted Black workers. Then in the 2010s, you have Black unemployment reach historic lows. And then fast forward to 2020s, COVID-19 had an impact on all of us, but definitely there was a significant difference in how it impacted Black workers disproportionately. Some of the economic impact of Black employment, economic growth. And it makes simple math. More people employed, more people can contribute to consumer spending and impacting the economy. However, there's still some disparities that occur, some employment gaps in regards to wage inequality. Then you have the wealth gap, because lower employment rates affect long-term economic stability. And last, you have the social impact. High unemployment increases reliance on social safety nets, if there even exist. Conclusion and discussion. So those are the quick highlights. At this point, I want to ask these 4 questions, and this is an opportunity for us to discuss some of your thoughts in regards to these questions, as well as if there are some thoughts or feedbacks within some of the slides that have been presented. So the first question, and I think this is important for us to know, because as we think about trends in Black college enrollment and employment, what role do you see for allies in advocating for policies that promote equitable access to higher education and economic opportunities? So what is the role for allies? And at this point, I would like to open it up and hear your thoughts, because as we are in transition with new policies that have been implemented and executive orders that have been signed off on, there are significant impact to the college experience, as well as how things are pertaining to diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of just enrollment practices. There's funding implications and things like that. So when we think about allies, what role should they have as it pertains to policies and promoting equitable access? Anyone?
Okay, I'll start. Well, and basically we'll just was put in the chat. Show up and speak up. Thank you, Melena. But also, just because there is a group of people who want to stigmatize something called DEI does not mean that the practice has to go away. People can be inclusive without giving it a title or getting an award. If that is if those are the values that you stand upon, is to still be inclusive. Okay, maybe some of our institutions, and you all know I'm in Tennessee, you can't reference race or gender and things like that, but that doesn't mean that we are unaware. And this is as educators, allies, or those who are being represented in the population, not unaware. The demographics haven't changed just because somebody decided they don't like DEI. We still have students who are underserved, who are underrepresented, who are marginalized, but to be active about making sure that those students are being reached regardless. And I think that's where everybody needs to be in these spaces.
Thank you for sharing that. And I saw in the chat, I love this. Show up and speak up where you can't. And as well as there might be individuals who are in situations where they can't necessarily speak up. So that is where your voice can still be heard on behalf of someone. I think that's one of the biggest things in terms of being an ally is being able to use your voice and knowing the why.
This is a lot to unpack, and I rarely found this. However, I saw somewhere, and when anybody says they saw somewhere, read somewhere, it means TikTok. That someone said that they were like, if your manager can't speak up, regardless of the race, regardless of the gender, and shake things up above, then it's a wrap. It's a wrap. It's really not that. You basically are given, I understand how this works over here. And it's your decision to either, be complicit and stay, or be like, you know what, I'm going to be ushering my cell phone out the door. But basically they were just like, and again, it's just general purpose. Like, if you can't shake things up because of how it goes, the higher up it goes, the more political and the more silence people get. But if you don't have someone who is your manager, again, regardless of gender, race, all that, because we all know that sometimes allies to me can be across the board, and all skin folk ain't kin folk. So we think sometimes that because we the same, woo, you got me, but they don't. They're not an ally. So it's kind of being aware of what situation you're in. Does the person above you speak for you in any, not even money or whatever, just anywhere? Like, if you're looking at something and a policy looks ridiculous, or your process that you're doing something doesn't seem right, and they're not speaking up for you, then you already know what time it is for other issues. But I would challenge allies, if they're not comfortable but want to figure out how to, because that's another thing. We say show up and speak up, and I think that is 100% accurate. But I wonder how many allies out there are suffering with how to do it. What should I do? What's the best approach?
I think that, and I'm speaking generally, I have my camera off, but I'm a white lady. I want to be an ally, and I want to be there. And it's that balance between speaking for and on behalf. Like, I was out there that summer with BLM George Floyd, and like learning when to do that, learning when to speak. It is difficult because you don't want to seem like you're taking over, but you want to be there to support. And it's just like, how much do I say? What is needed, like, in that moment? And just learning that balance is, I don't want to say hard, but it's necessary.
And I would challenge that, Ashley. Thank you. I think, yes, it is hard. don't think it's not hard. Um, Regardless of your background and things like that. If you feel that something should be a particular way, and there's a different thought in regards to that, trying to have dialogue, trying to make change, it's not going to happen overnight. It's hard to, if I say the sky is blue and you see it's red, it's going to take a while for the meeting of the minds to really come to that midpoint. So I want to acknowledge what you're saying, but also recognizing that it's not easy. It is not
And,
easy.
and that statement, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, has real, like this election, like really showed me like not everybody's on the same page.
Well,
Agreed.
Ashley, I hear what you're saying about it being hard and you don't, and there's a balance and you don't want to seem like you're taking over. But I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is just Roz's raw thoughts. I'm speaking for me. Um, if you want to take over, if you're taking over for the right reasons in terms of your allyship, I don't have a problem with it. I really and truly don't. The problem that I have is when somebody wants to be an ally and all of a sudden it's like, look at me, look at me. I'm out here marching with the Black people. No, that's not an ally. That's you, like Portia said, you trying to get a title, you trying to get an award. That's not allyship. Allyship is genuine. And so, if you out there and you feel like you need to speak up, if you feel like you need to speak up 5 or 6 times, if it's genuine and you speaking from the heart and this is really your passion and what you truly want to do, I'm right there with you. I have no problem with that.
I can speak for Ashley. She's my colleague at Texas Christian University. She is truly, truly not out for herself and truly has a heart for people. And I'm so excited that she's on this call with us today.
You can hear it. You can hear it. That's the bottom line. You can hear it in Ashley's voice, and also, and I don't want to speak for Roz, but I don't think that's what she was intending. But she was just trying to say there are performative people out there that do that, not necessarily saying it's Ashley.
Oh,
Also,
no, not at all.
yeah.
No,
And I was on the same page
I'm
on
trying
that
to
too.
encourage.
Yeah.
Yes, encourage.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
trying to
not here to be some
encourage.
white savior or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
Back at it's my kid can go down to the park, my son, and I don't have to worry. Like that isn't right. So every step of the way, I want to be there where I can, and so I'm here today.
Awesome. And you know what you've done, Ashley? You taught me, because I said all skin folk and kinfolk, and that is generally a Black term, but you just made me rethink that whole statement when you said that with the election. I was like, that's so true. That is so true. So thank you.
And just the fact that you related to what Portia said when she said it. See, to me, that's genuine. So yeah, so no, don't ever, if there's ever something that I say and you're like, oh my God, she's offended me, please tell me, because that's not how I meant it. No, you want to be an ally out here, be an ally. I'm right there with you. We need more of you, as a matter of fact.
I totally agree. One thing that Portia said, and I wanted to circle back with the whole policy and ally thing. So over the weekend, it's apropos. Um, I was in DC hanging out and catching up with my best friend, and he works for the government. And of course, he shared with me that email that he received in terms of you need to identify, what did you do this week? The 5 bullet points or whatever.
So it was
Now,
a real
since
email.
then, huh?
It was a real email.
Oh, it was a real email. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He pulled it up and was like, I was like, I see what you're dealing with. Okay, yes.
That email would have got ignored. But go ahead.
But to that, I was listening to some things on the radio wherever yesterday. So what has happened for some folks, and this is where the allies come in, and it could look differently, but there were some managers, as you were talking about at the top, that was like, no, disregard that or whatever. So it goes back to the way that you were saying in terms of if whoever's above you is not willing to speak up or shake things up, then that impacts where you are. So that was the one thing that you said that triggered it. I wanted to at least share that because that's a small well, that's an example of how someone took one thing and a manager then said, well, no, I don't think, or XYZ. Second question. What actions can institutions, employers, or policymakers take to ensure that higher education and economic opportunities are more inclusive for all students and workers?
Well, I kind of agree with Portia. That has to come from the top. I will only speak for TCU. Um, our president, chancellor, and board of regents, as well as the dean of the colleges, are in the finishing up a strategic plan and making sure that all of those things that are listed are in our pillars. So it comes from the top, and they're the ones who can make those changes. And so we're excited that we are a part of the strategic plan. We had some input in it as well. And so that's been a great thing for us at Texas Christian University.
All right. Go Horn Frogs. Yes.
I want to also
Um,
speak for William Carey University. It's a small Christian school, but all of our students are international. They're majority in Africa. They are in the slums. They are spreading the word of Jesus Christ. They are learning to develop and be leaders. And that's our population. And so a lot of them was impacted by the U.S. aid that was cut off. A lot of their wives and things. So it was like a rug pulled from up under their feet, like funding just gone. What can seem like a bad thing can also be a good thing. So it created an opportunity. Speaking to what Regina was saying, we are in the middle of doing our strategic plan, and the president of our institution is from India. So being around all these different cultures, climate change, dealing with things from a global perspective. All of our employees are Turkey. We're all across the globe, and our students are majority in Africa. So being able to be a registrar in this spot has opened my eyes, not just from Western things that are transpired, but from a global perspective. And he's leaned on us, and we obviously just had a meeting this week about, how can in the Christian community change that USAID has pulled at least 58 million from the African population, which majority impacted the health industry there. Them getting resources for health, all the different type of diseases and things like that. So now they're in the middle, evangelical churches, like, there was something thrown out on the table this week. If each person that go to church tithe actually 10%, that would cover the $58 million that was taken from Africa from the USAID they was getting from help. But this also created Kenya, Ghana, all these other countries to create, hey, we were dependent on Western aid, but how can we take our own natural resources and create independence over here in our country, in our continent? So it's been a very insightful conversation, but also perception to see. And, I thank God for this because I've always thinking US, and everything that's going on here. But there's people here, and our institution thrive off of donations. It's not about federal aid. We're not tied to any of that. But it's just people naturally donating to our school, which provides education to these students in Africa, which in terms they go out and develop, and their pastors, they go into the slums, take care of people, and spread the word. So
Thank you for sharing that.
you're welcome.
Any other insights to the second bullet regarding what actions can institutions, et cetera, make to make it more inclusive?
I'm waiting to
The
see
one
if
thing,
anybody
go
jump
ahead.
in. Okay, and so this is my opinion. I'm not speaking for my institution, of course, but I think institutions, employers, anyone, kind of goes back to what I said before, stand on your values without it needing to have a title. If you believed that you believe your institution has been inclusive and is ensuring that everyone who can get into your institution has that opportunity, continue to do it. I think there was too much reliance on that checkbox of, yep, we're DEI. A lot of institutions and businesses had DEI in a title, in a department, but not in behavior, not in organizational culture. So it has to be more, are you going to be about it or not? And if that is your mission, your values, those are your practices, then you won't go back. And we won't see that suddenly a lot more students of color are no longer being admitted, or a lot more professionals of color are not being hired into your institutions or organizations. Your practices won't change if that's really the values, if those are the values you are truly standing on as an institution or an organization.
Thank you so much for sharing that. About a week and a half ago, I was in a meeting. And so, of course, we have our strategic plan, and I currently work at a HBCU. So that's number one. Number two, we are part of a system. So it's a system of 12 schools and regional centers. And so we all have a shared strategic plan, and each of us, will have different goals of how we go about meeting it. And so one of the strategic plan is specifically entitled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And so part of the conversation that we were just having as a campus, although we have to wait and hear what's going to happen at the system level, we were just talking internally, and basically we already felt that all the things that we had listed as action items under that DEI can fit under all of the other four institutional priorities. So like it was just mentioned, yes, if it's embedded in terms of who you are as an institution and what you're doing, it's not necessarily going to be a far stretch for it. So thank you for sharing that, and that triggered something. The third question, how do you see the relationship between employment trends and college enrollment for Black students? What economic factors do you think play the biggest role?
This is Andrea Poole, and I hope you all can hear me. I just wanted to chime in on this question because it still follows suit with what everyone else has spoken of. If those values are already there, then our economic impact, it'll still be impacted by the decisions made at the presidential level and our Congress and our Senates. But the employers should already have those values in place. So if they only hired because they were told to, then of course they're going to take the escape route to get rid of people that they feel they are better than, even though they hired them. If they were able to get a check because they had somebody on staff titled under that affiliation, then they're going to get rid of them because they don't have any benefit of that anymore. But the value system of each individual person in whichever title they hold will always determine higher than what the president or the Congress or the Senate or anyone else in those legislative positions are going to dictate, because they already have those values in place. So simply because the title of DEI is no longer available for just for a talking point for those people that used it for that, then they're always going to bail out because they were just, bandwagon jumpers. They weren't really holding the value of what it means to have a diverse workplace, or to be inclusive with the people that you employ, or to have equity because you want everyone to be at the same level. They didn't have that value to begin with. So to put them in any type of a standard, the only way that the best impact would be for them to not be in those positions any longer. But if they are the owners and they are the presidents, then that's where those other allies come in, because they also would be able to speak on behalf of what the value should be. And if enough people voice their opinions of what those values should be, then those people wouldn't be in those places any longer.
And then I don't have the data, but it does show that Black enrollment at public four-year colleges dropped by nearly 90% between 2017 and 2022 due to economic factors. And that has to do with some of them working full-time, some of them taking out loans. So this question would be good if we had some data on the employment trends and college enrollment for Black students to really effectively answer it.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Any other comments? And I know we're creeping on time. I'll go ahead and ask the last question. What additional strategies could be implemented to support Black college students and workers?
I don't know specifically what strategies. However, I would take a look at yourself and just find out what your ministry is. I think we look at a lot of this and you're like, you got to be a warrior, you got to fight, you got to stand up, you got to do all this stuff. And there are people out there, but that may not be your ministry, and that's okay, because there's another role for you that would help push the goal forward, you know, that would help you push you towards your goal. And I feel like that was something that I struggled with. I don't know if I've mentioned it here, I probably have, but a while ago when the whole Trayvon Martin, when all of that was happening, I was struggling to figure out what my role was in all of that. And then I had to find what it is. So know yourself, find what your role is, and then that's how you can be important. Because all roles are important, whatever strategy you want to implement.
Thank you for that.
I think that's excellent. I think knowing your role is very important. Like she said, everyone's role is important. If you're not great at organizing, then you shouldn't organize parties. But you may be someone who is able to rally and motivate people once they get there. So I think it is important to kind of know who you are as a person, and then where you do see that you can help. A lot of times, I know they say, see something, say something. If you see a place where you're needed, implement yourself, put yourself in that place. Always be compassionate toward other people. And I think if we extend compassion to people, that'll help us out a lot in general. Try to be compassionate towards somebody the way you would want someone to be compassionate to your mother or your sister or your brother. You not necessarily, people say treat them the way you want to be treated. Sometimes we don't know how we deserve to be treated, so we don't treat ourselves well. Treat them the way you would want somebody to care for someone that you love. So I think just being compassionate and finding out truthfully, like she said, who you are, that's gonna be the biggest part of implementing this action, putting things into action.
And when you're out here and you're on these college campuses and you're showing support for you know, I know what this webinar is about, but I'm just gonna say students, any student. Students can tell.
Yep.
Students know when
Yep.
you fake,
Yep.
and students know when you for real. So, you know, cut all of the imposter stuff. Like Portia said, find your ministry, show your compassion, be yourself, like LaQuanda said. And, you know, those students will recognize that you are out here and that you are out here for their, and have their best interest at heart, that you are out here to help them. And they'll understand and they'll recognize that. And they'll know that, you know, you're showing support for them.
And I want to add one of the things we did for the past 2 years, Black faculty and staff, in September when students come back to campus, we do what we call a Black to the Future, where it's a speed dating, where each table, a Black faculty and staff member is sitting there and the students are rotating and getting to meet us. And then we feed them and have door prizes, and then we build connections from there. And so we started it 2 years ago. And because when you're on a big campus, you can't always see us in one concentrated area. So it's been really great. It has.
Thank you for sharing that, Regina. I might have to snag that
You
over
can
here.
steal it. You could, and we got, you know, I don't have no budget, so we got people to donate pizza and water and door prize.
Yes. And that's a strategy within itself. Find, if you know individuals, I mean, there's always individuals, organizations that believe in the mission, believe in what you're doing. So if you're able to find and piggyback so that they can help support what you're doing, your initiatives, that's always a great strategy.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna take a different angle on this. One of the things, and I agree with everybody said. I'm taking it. I'm gonna meet them where they are prior to them getting to the college experience. So me being a first generation grad, I looked at and I was answering these questions. I'm looking like, wow, my experience in higher education, but just going to college. I mean, I've accomplished 3 degrees, and in my experience it's different from now, but in my experience, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. Um, Everybody who I have ran into that has mentored me, um, I have partnered with campus presidents when I was a student. I just be all up in their offices. I'd be all up in their computer. I'd be like, I just ask tons and tons of questions. They'd be like, they go, Mark, what is she finna ask? And I just beat down their door. I'd be like, well, how you do this? How you do that? And they give me all these tools and resources, but I built relationships along the way. And majority of women, I would say women that was my leaders, and I've been in higher education since 2007 and grew up from college student on up. I thought I was going to be in tech doing some of that stuff. But I ended up falling into education, being a registrar and just supporting students and student success coach, all different type of areas of enrollment management. But all of my mentors and my leaders who were majority Caucasian women, and they actually took me up under their wings, and we actually still keep in contact today. Today about my babies, everything. I would just say Black women, I've always been a threat to them, and they kind of try to block me along my career path. That's been my experience. So I don't know why, but that's been my experience throughout my career. Um, Once I start digging in, asking questions, or being that ally to step up for myself or for my team as a leader, saying, I need this, I need that, and really break down the process, it gets kind of, we got to get rid of her. She's diving in too much stuff. She got the reports, and I go to putting together everything. That's been my experience throughout my career. So, which has led me to launch into your last question here is I said, okay, since nobody don't want to hire me or whatever, and I landed this job that I have now, I'm going to go back and mentor. But it's mentoring all demographics, all races. I partner with mothers, kids in high school, and taking all this knowledge I know from a registrar perspective, from being a student success coach, from being working in admissions, coupling it all together, and I become a mentor outside. So it's taking it to the social media realm, meeting them where they're at, doing digital marketing, and guiding them away. What college do you desire to go to? Is it historic Black college? Is it a Power Five? What are you looking for? What are you looking to get out of it? Here go the resources. You don't have to take out all these loans. You can take advantage of these scholarships. This is where you can find the scholarships. So kind of just being that mentor to the parent and the student at a high school level, helping them get into college.
Marquetta, that's very, very good. One thing I will say to you, if and like I said before, these are Roz's raw thoughts. My whole theory, my theory has always been, if a sister is threatened by you, you didn't need them to be your mentor in the first place. Seriously, because there's a lot of us out there who want to see us succeed. But then, there are a lot of us out there who, like you said, they feel they have no holler. They, so it's good that you redirected your energy. And I love the fact that you are out here meeting students and families at the high school level, because we need more of that, much more of that. I've even gone to meetings where they talked about meeting students and families at the middle school level, starting them as young as the middle school level to get them to thinking about to a life after high school. So I keep doing what you're doing. You have found your ministry, and keep working it, but don't ever Don't let them sisters get on your nerve. That the bottom line is they're not comfortable within themselves, and they project it out. But there are a lot of us out here who like, I love mentoring. I don't go around telling people I'm going to mentor them. I just let the relationships develop organically. And that seems to have worked best. But you know, it's anybody. It's black, white, red, green, blue. It doesn't matter as long as there can be a good mentor-mentee relationship. So, but keep doing what you're doing. I love that you're working with students and families at the high school level.
Roz is my mentor.
Thank you,
Well,
Rosalind. Thank you, guys. And just know it didn't deter. I still love my Black women, all of that. It didn't deter me. It just, I matured in such a way of know how to, navigate around that. I still
Absolutely.
give everybody who I introduced to or work with, I give them that open opportunity. It's just certain things you look for, and once you know which way to go, I need to walk out this door, I need to go into this door, I need to back off this door, I need to sit down. You'll
Absolutely.
know different things off those experiences. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Portia is my mentee, and I love her dearly.
So we have hit time, everyone. Thank you so much. And I will just throw my last piece in is, I think, remember that those of us who are in education don't have to be faculty in order to educate people on how to get into college through college and get jobs. And so be an educator wherever your ministry falls. We have an inside knowledge that no one else has outside of higher ed. So be that person, that mentor, and help those that are in your path.
And I just want to say thank you all for joining this conversation. I think quick highlights is that at the end of the day, we all play a role. You just have to identify what that role is, find that passion, move towards it, use each other as needed to find that support. And the possibilities are endless. It's just a matter if you're going to limit yourself. Thank you.
Just real quick to answer Alicia's question, she put a couple of questions in the chat. Alicia, are you planning on attending annual meeting in Seattle?
I don't think so. I wasn't aware of that, but maybe if you could, can I reach out to you and get that information so I can kind of follow up?
Yes, rperry@allegheny.edu.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank
You
you.
can follow us up on AACRAO Exchange if you are ever. We got Facebook, Black Caucus. Roz will give you the rundown. So we out here. We out here in these streets.
Yes, and yeah, Black Caucus is in it was posted. Thank you, Paige and Melina.
Thank you, Dr. Garcon. This was wonderful.
Yes,
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Thank you all.
Thank you. This was really good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Belma. You too.
Thank you.